Mike, I'm Mike from GeoDNet. I'm gonna refer to you only now. If it's Wingless Mike, I'll say that. But Mike, thanks so much for joining. No, we chatted yesterday. We posted an announcement, so I think most of the people that are in here now have read the announcement. So mainly, yeah, as Wingbits Mike said, we'll devote this to the device questions only. And I'll for anyone that hasn't met Mike from GeoDNet, which I doubt, but I'll let him do a quick intro and tell everyone who he is, and then we can get going.
Yes. Hi, everybody. My name is Mike Horton. I'm the project creator of GEODNet. And with respect to the Hyfix Wingbit device, I've been helping oversee some of the technical architecture decisions and working with the engineers and factory overseas that's actually making the device and manufacturing it, along with the Wingbits team to try to quickly get a good device out to the community. So I've been pretty heavily involved in the engineering design of this device.
Perfect. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, so I mean, besides what in the announcement we outlined, essentially everything has been progressing very nicely, and overall, the device is going to be awesome. It just so happened that recently, we discovered that there was a small issue with the coupler that created noise. And then we also decided to upgrade the LNA in the device. And simply because Chinese New Year is starting, we did not have enough time to actually do these changes before. So we did make the decision to delay shipping a little bit, because it's just both me and Mike and our teams agree that we want to produce the best possible device rather than shipping it a month early. But open for any questions. I know we have some. And Mike, do you want to go more into the details of
Yeah,
the
maybe I
technicalities?
could talk a little bit more on the technical details. I don't know there's any way, doesn't look like there's any way to share content into this into the
Yeah.
AMA. So I'll just talk about it. We can probably share the data later.
Mhm.
But I think to start off with the original design, had a capability for you to kind of plug in the antenna to either the top port or the side port. And we took that decision because we thought for people who had an existing ADS-B antenna, they might want to reuse that. And the side port we felt was lower risk. We thought maybe plugging into the top port might interfere with the GNSS antenna. And that assumption turned out to be false. You can definitely plug the existing ADS-B antenna you have into the top port, and that's what we would recommend people to do, as it's the cleanest, because usually that antenna would be up above, so you're going up vertically, so you won't have this cable looping around the side and so forth, and it doesn't have any effect on the GNSS. But having two antenna ports, it turns out, wasn't a great decision. Two physically connected antenna ports through a RF coupler wasn't a great decision, because ADS-B is super noise sensitive. The encoding and modulation, it's like an AM radio, so you really kind of gotta have the cleanest possible signal. So we made the decision to make the two ports physically separated. You could use a side port if you want, but you'll have to open up the bottom of the unit where the ADS-B mini PCIe is, and physically move a little connector. And we don't really recommend doing that unless there's some special reason to do it. But you can still use a side port, but you need to physically move the internal wiring so that there's only one antenna ever connected, only one physical RF connection ever to the ADS-B receiver at one time. And that really helps improve the performance. And then we further saw, look, there's still a little bit of range reduction relative to the radar box, because the LNA that we chose in the original design was a lower cost LNA, but a good LNA, but not like the absolute best LNA money can buy for this particular application. And there's enough of a difference. That's about 10 to 20% difference. We have data on that. We've had units installed looking at the flight tracking, and about a 10 to 20% difference in range between our unit and, say, the AirNav radar box. And we wanted to close that gap. We reverted to this expensive LNA. It's a kind of a specialized LNA that's actually quite expensive. and relatively high power, but nothing that's going to affect like big picture power. But relative to the LNA we chose, yeah, kind of expensive and cumbersome. But when we reverted back to that LNA, which has been used in ADS-B for a while, it did in fact get the range to the standard range that other devices have seen. So we're now 100% or even maybe better in some cases. And that's what we want to go with. So we need to put that into the unit. That can be added to the units. We've already built basically 1,000 of these things. All the boards, all the packages are all built, ready to go. But we're going to add that in as between the antenna port and the ADS-B board in order to get squeeze a bit more performance out. So that change, along with the fact that these units are pretty complex to assemble, they're a significant step up in terms of packaging and just the number of parts in them relative to traditional GeoDNet miners. It's taking, we need to take a bit of time to get that done. And then there's just two solid weeks of sort of no op time overseas right now due to the Chinese New Year. So all that factored in, it's going to take a little bit of time, and we're targeting to begin shipment. I think we will begin shipment at the end of February, beginning of March, and then those will start steadily shipping out pretty quickly thereafter. We're targeting kind of 100 every couple of days production rate. So overall, we'll catch up quickly. I think the solution is known and well understood. The unit overall is great. We do have been testing units for a bit now in terms of configuration, setup, and all these things, and really it's great. Just want to make sure we get a fully perfect unit out the door on the first try here. So that's what we're aiming for. Happy to kind of talk about the technology more on the hardware side, and afterwards we can share some of the recent data that we've captured. So it's looking good.
Really appreciate that. It was a fantastic summary, Mike. But yeah, I don't have anything to add to that. I mean, when we discussed, it was pretty clear that the right thing to do for everyone involved was to actually make sure it's perfect. So I think everyone can agree on that, even though it's always obviously an inconvenience when something gets slightly delayed. But if anyone has any questions for me or Mike, if it's on the technical side, Mike would be much better suited. So we have the first question here. WB200 is also affected by the changes in delay, correct?
Yes.
But what I'm excited about, just from while the questions are coming in, is presenting this new higher quality network to customers is generating a lot of interest, and seems to be opening up new segments that are unattainable for the existing tracking networks. So it's definitely, this is going to be an exciting time as these devices kind of get shipped out. Does this shipping update include units bought from Helium Deploy? It includes units bought from everyone, I would assume, Mike, unless I'm thinking differently here.
Yes. We'll start shipping evenly to distributors at the beginning. So yeah, it's everyone. We're gonna try to keep everything completely synchronized, so everyone's getting kind of pro rata distribution of units as they go out. Obviously, first come orders that were placed earlier will go out earlier, but yeah, we're gonna try to keep it. Orders were being placed through all the different distributors, I think, pretty much from the earliest days of the launch. So we'll be getting units out to everybody kind of in parallel as they come out. And
perfect. And
our factory tends to, once they get going, they get going. So it should be pretty smooth sailing, as because we do have all the materials other than the LNA, but the LNA is in stock and we're behind it. I think we may have already purchased the factory may have already purchased the LNA yesterday as we've finished up all this testing over the last few days and took the decision, I think the final decision on Monday of this week, to go ahead and delay so we could add this one last component into it to get more airplanes per unit. So there we go. I think there isn't any major risks at this point because we have really everything. We were ready to ship. but we just decided, look, let's take a little bit longer to do more testing, get this LNA in, and you know, do it right instead of putting stuff in your hands that might have needs for an upgrade or this or that or whatever. It creates a big mess for everybody when that happens.
Yeah, no, very good point. This is a kind of good segue from based on what you said there. So, Deep in Connection asks, when do you expect to get to full production, and what does full weekly capacity look like?
I think we'll get to a full production within the first few days of March. I mean, we have already been, so we were producing some. We're actually going to have to rework a small batch that had already been completely 100% finished, sealed up, and ready to ship to add the LNA in. I think the estimate is we'll be able to produce, so we kind of have a production line in place that is so I don't really anticipate any delay to get to full production. That capacity right now is about 100 every 2 days. So let's see, if you divided 30, it's about 1,500 a month, which is, you know, it means we can catch up the whole backlog in about a month.
Yeah,
It's not, we have plenty of capacity essentially. But you
perfect.
have a little bit of we got to get the first baby out, and that's always painful, if you will. But once the baby's out, then it's going to be pretty smooth sailing.
Perfect, perfect. And Alpine actually has two questions that go into one. So the first part is, with the dual miner, how separated are the two systems? Can one component be disabled while running the other? And the second question is essentially, how upgradable, modifiable is the unit if something is needed?
So they're fully separate subsystems. The triple band GNSS subsystem has its own antenna. It also has its own crypto chip that does the signature of the data and validation of it's a valid piece of hardware. So we took the decision, instead of trying to share crypto chips and the complexity that would involve, you could think of this hardware as having really a Wingbits section that is controlled by Wingbits, that firmware that's loaded on there that runs the Wingbits section is really its own independent piece of firmware. The GEODNET team and the manufacturer is not involved in the development of that firmware. That firmware is developed and run by Wingbits, and it has its own crypto chip, and it uses the hardware to read the ADSB data from the mini PCIe card. And then the same is true from the GEODNET side, although the GEODNET radio is on the main board. That leaves one additional mini PCIe slot open that we've kind of targeted and labeled on the unit as there for 4G and LTE, in case there are people and we've set up a SIM card slot that can easily put the SIM into that mini PCIe card. They're off-the-shelf mini PCIe cards that can support that. So when we get a little bit of time, we'll write the firmware, make sure all that works, and then you would potentially be able to buy an off-the-shelf mini PCIe card for 4G and backhaul data through 4G, with the caveat that the Wingbits and the GEODNET both produce quite a bit of data. So you got to be really careful on the cost of that, and that's very dependent on location and country that you're in, whether that cellular data is how expensive that cellular data is. But it's an option that I think is going to be great. But that same mini PCIe slot could be used for other things. We've been thinking about future radios with Wingbits relative to like boat tracking, other things, and then there are two, nice SMA connectors on the side, and those can be have TFL connectors that come out from them, so they can be kind of wired into the different mini PCIe cards. So it is pretty upgradable with two mini PCIe slots that are accessible through panels. These panels have O-ring seals, so they're waterproof. They can be opened up with a small hex screwdriver. You can open up to the mini PCIe slots and access those, and so that there is a thought that this is going to be, a unit that is easily upgradable in the field to different capabilities. But certainly at the first shot here, we're looking at getting the standard unit out, making sure everything is perfect, and then we can start thinking about some of those add-ons over time.
Perfect. Next question is if you have an estimate of how many units have been sold to date.
I think that you guys can maybe share that if you like through the reservation process.
Yeah, I mean, from what we gathered, so obviously not everyone that it seems like not everyone that bought, especially people that bought larger kind of like many units to essentially create fleets, didn't necessarily register all of them yet. But I would estimate the number being somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000, like to not promise something too much. If that's not in line with what you have, Mike, do you please
That's in
comment?
line. I was thinking we actually, separate from this AMA, I had in my mind, maybe we should try to reconcile that more tightly over the next couple of days, just because
Yeah.
it would be super helpful to have
Yeah.
that dialed down as tight as we can.
Yeah, we'll get some more accurate numbers, and we'll post it for everyone so we can get a more accurate, some more accurate info on that. I think Zeppelin, for your question, I think that's better probably answered in a ticket, either with us or with GEODNET or both, since it's kind of hard to reply to that one just without seeing exactly where it is. Okay, let's see what other questions we have here. Arada asks, if we buy it now, when will we get it as other who bought it before, or do we get it later?
Yeah, I mean, you'll be at the end of the queue, and I would estimate late March timeframe, early April, maybe mid-April. I don't know. I can't be 100. We can't.
Yeah.
There are life. It's this stuff is hard to be exact down to the day on it. If maybe if we had millions of units going through the factory, we could, but we're not at that level. It's also a brand new unit. So it's even trickier to kind of gauge exactly what's going to happen. But I would guess somewhere between the end of March and the end of April, probably closer to probably take the midpoint, middle of April, let's say, something like that. If you ask Sharon on our team, who manages a lot of logistics, she'll probably give you a more conservative answer than me. So keep that in mind. But it's going to move quickly. Once it gets going, these things move pretty quickly, and I'm optimistic.
Yeah, perfect. Khaled asked about the plan for shipping to Middle East Gulf, and Reuven actually stepped in and answered, because I know we've had several registered hexes for device purchases in that area. So I think Reuven kind of answered. Many of the sellers of the hardware actually ship worldwide, so I would kind of look through there. But on a side note, that area is super great for us.
Yeah.
We do
Super
need
rare for us
devices
too,
there.
by the way.
Yeah, and customers are requesting coverage there, so it would definitely be a beneficial area to be early in, based on what may come in the future.
Yeah, same for GeoDNet. It's up near the top of our request list for more coverage, especially outside the UAE and the Middle East.
Yeah.
Other countries besides the UAE, definitely a lot of interest from customers to get more coverage. UAE, we're doing
Essentially,
pretty well.
Yeah. I've seen you have a ton of devices there, but from our perspective, in terms of device map, if you drag essentially a belt from Turkey over Middle East down to Southeast Asia, that entire area is important to us.
Yeah, there's a ton of air traffic there these days.
Yeah, it's amazing, and the other networks are struggling a bit there. But Dorian, Dorian said, "Wait, boat tracking, was that a leak?" Dorian, this is more of a discussion to leave options if we decide to do certain things. But boat tracking was one of the things discussed. Just we want to leave it flexible, so to speak. Now, given that Hyfix has decided to absorb the cost of the high-end LNA this time, could this decision influence the pricing of future devices?
Possibly, but possibly. I think that like kind of alluded to earlier, it's a new product, and a lot of things we've been moving it through the process as fast as we can. and paying whatever we need to pay to get this thing made. The factory has been really great on just doing what needs to be done. The molding costs, it is a quite complicated unit. You'll see when you get it. It's another level of packaging up from previous deep end miners out there.
Yeah,
So it's
it's super
possible.
nice.
It's possible that it could when the factory comes back with the final bill and we see, you know, what it was. Um, but I don't plan on it. I think the goal is to mature the design of, you know, get better at producing it and try to hopefully the volume continues to grow as the Wingbits networks grow and as the flywheel kicks in. So the goal is not to, but you never know. But that the goal is to just absorb the cost and maybe can find some other areas that, as we get more volume, can squeeze some cost out of to bring it back to where we had hoped to be when we put the bill of materials together and the architecture of this device together.
Oh, perfect. I can't pronounce this name, so apologies, but I'm going to read a question. Does it ship with any mounting brackets? What system is used? And what do we need to get ready for installs?
So it ships with the exact same mounting bracket, which is three pretty simple mounting brackets and a 5/8 inch hex rod of 1 foot length. That's what it ships with. And if you, that's pretty straightforward to install that. Uh, if you want to install uh, you have an existing ADS-B antenna, again, you can connect that in. If you want to do your own mounting bracket, you can definitely do that. But there is a decent mounting system that you can install. It also, because sometimes you might be up on the roof and the cable, while being long, isn't maybe not always long enough. There is a included female to female RJ45 extender if you're using the wired Ethernet option. Um, and there are it's a standard barrel jack for the power, so you can get extenders for that as well. So it should be pretty straightforward to install, and in some ways easier than the traditional GeoDNet miner or Wingbits kind of DIY miner. It should be, I think, in most cases easier.
Mhm.
But every installation is different, and every installation you got to kind of look at, and it's not necessary that every part you need will be in the kit. Just for a sort of an average installation, it should be everything you need. But you know, every roof is a little different. Every environment's a little different as to sort of set up. So could be you get the kit and you look at it and you need a couple parts from Home Depot or from Amazon or whatnot, depending on your situation.
Perfect. Cable asked if there's any plans on more install setup best practices videos. I can answer from our point of view for now. Like we're gonna come out with better video material, essentially some more graphics to showcase like best practices. And long term, we obviously we will add more and more functionality and insights into how to optimize based on your situation. So that will come. I think GeoDNet has quite a lot of material already. But Mike, I don't know if you want to add on to
Yeah,
it.
I mean, I just got one set up on I had one kind of set up first when we were first testing. I had one set up in behind my garage, and it wasn't really that ideal in installation, but it was good enough to just get some kind of rough data, making sure that everything was working. And then just before the holidays, I got it set up on the roof of my house really perfectly, and I'm going from there now. I had to get a roofer to help me because my wife vetoed me getting up to that point, but I ended up going up there to the exact spot we installed it anyway. So it was kind of a funny thing because then the roofer was like, "Well, I'm not quite sure," so I ended up going up and helping him install it. But now I have a really clean install, and yeah, I think We'll
I think it's
definitely
pretty.
use that. We'll use that
Yeah,
install to make some content as well, and I'm sure others in the community will make content on how to install it. So I think there'll be plenty of guidance on how to install it.
yeah, exactly. And then Camel asks what temperature the device can handle, as they live in Middle East. But I know you already have devices there.
Yeah, I mean, 0 to 70 is the temperature range. We'll do some testing, more testing. I think everything in there can actually handle minus 40 to 85, which is an incredible industrial temperature range, but certainly plan for 0 to 70 C for now.
Yeah.
And there's no reason to think it won't go well minus 20 to 70. I mean, it's got all basically industrial qualified components in it. I think that's an area we put quite some effort into this design to make it a robust. We acquired a rain testing system. The factory, I shouldn't say we. The factory acquired a rain testing system to test all the units, each one individually initially for any potential moisture leaks and so forth. Yeah.
Gacho has a question and asking what performance gains or performance and quality of hardware are these versus the build your own devices that many use.
Well, I think that the fact that it's a true embedded system and not a Pi, I think is going to add to the software stability quite a lot. Just in general, the sort of Pi-based devices tend to have trouble with long-term software stability, and they're not bad. But this is a real embedded system running a much stripped down version of Linux that tends to create stability in long-term sort of less crashes, less issues. In addition, the fact that it's so weatherproof and all sealed up together, I think, is another advantage. The ADS-B radio itself is very physics limited. There's only so much you can do. There's a certain radio encoding and modulation. There's a certain physics of the power levels from where the signal is broadcast from to when it reaches the antenna. There are environmental conditions that play in depending on what kind of trees and mountains and hills are around and how high up the antenna finally is and so forth. So those physics-based things tend to create the ultimate limit of how many planes you can track. And our goal is to optimize the design to hit that physics limit. And then from there, maybe over time we can find some ways to squeeze even more performance out, but certainly the primary limit tends to be not under our control. So what we can do to make the device better is mostly make it more robust, make it easier to deploy, make it have a higher uptime. And I think the decisions we've taken on that have been informed by Wingbits' experience with the DIY devices, combined with our experiences with the current generation of GeoDNet mining hardware that's out there. And we have tried to optimize against that. So it does have a wired Ethernet capability. It does have the ability to potentially add SIM cards to it in the future. It has a more robust CPU that has a more full up TCP/IP stack as opposed to LWIP. So LWIP is kind of the standard for internet stack on this really small embedded system. So the current generation of GeoDNet hardware is a really tiny embedded system. This is a bit bigger and beefier. So I think we've taken the learnings that we have and put it into the architecture of this device to try to create something that's really stable. Because I think that's the performance aspect that is most valued by customers, is they want really reliable data feeds. Anything you want to add to that, Robin?
No, I think you said pretty much everything, but I mean that was also one of the reasons why we decided to delay, is because we saw, okay, well, we can actually squeeze more out of this by improving a few less things. But with these upgrades, it will be a really great device. But I think it's everything that comes with it, because the main reason for doing this is the security aspect. The proof of location aspect, super important. That's gonna significantly help the network. The ease of deploying, the upgradeability and the stability. Those are all like super important things. So I think this is all in all, it's going to be just so much more powerful for the network and better for everybody that deploys it, honestly. So I'm super pumped about it. I think we're running out of time. See if there's any last questions that we need to answer. And then if you guys have more questions, obviously feel free to post in the channel and we'll get them answered. But we have essentially...
one last thing, Robin.
Sorry?
I wanted to add one last point, if I can.
Yeah, of course.
So there was a Christmas special that Hyfix ran with airdrop coupons, and we did, given this delay, we told the factory to reserve some coupons for this delay. So those orders that were placed during that period, well, actually all the orders placed essentially for Wingbits are still eligible and may in fact randomly receive the 10,000 GOD airdrop coupons. So some of those have been reserved for this batch.
That's a nice add-on. That's amazing. Yeah, that's awesome. But Mike, again, I mean, thanks so much for coming on here. Really looking forward to getting these devices out. Things are gonna be super nice. Thanks to everyone for joining. I really appreciate everyone showing up and appreciate the understanding of the delay. It seems like everyone thought we made the right decision. We certainly think so. But anything else? Ask in the channel. Join our stage next week with any follow-up questions. But besides that, I appreciate it very much. And Mike, thanks again. And Wingbits Mike, thanks for hosting it for us.
Just guys, everyone have a nice day or nice evening, and see you out there.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.